When my mom married his dad, I didn't think much would change. We weren't kids. I was 19, already in college. Theo was 20, finishing up his sophomore year a few hours away. They did this whole backyard wedding thing that summer. Small, intimate, with twinkle lights and way too much white wine. Everyone cried. I just kept smiling and wondering if I could get away with leaving early. Theo and I had met once before the wedding. Briefly. One of those awkward, here's your new stepbrother brunches that felt more like a job interview. He was taller than I expected. Built like someone who actually committed to a gym schedule. I remember he wore this faded NASA sweatshirt with a rip under the arm. It shouldn't have looked good, but it did. We barely talked. I was quiet by default, and Theo had this kind of energy that made me feel like I was always one step behind. Confident without trying. That kind of guy. After the wedding, I figured we'd go back to our own lives. Separate schools. Separate cities. But then, his dad got offered a short-term work contract overseas, and my mom decided to join him, which meant, suddenly, we were the ones left behind, Theo and me, sharing the house for the rest of the summer. Just until we get back, Mom had said, kissing my cheek before boarding her flight. You boys will take care of each other. I remember standing in the driveway, watching their Uber pull away, my suitcase still half-zipped on the porch. I turned to Theo. He looked just as stunned. So, he said, running a hand through his messy hair, you want the big bedroom, or should we fight to the death for it? I smiled. You can keep it. I'm not that attached to luxury. Fair. I need the space for my ego. We both laughed. That was the first time it felt like we weren't just two strangers forced to coexist. And honestly, the first week wasn't bad. We fell into a rhythm. Grocery runs. Dumb reality shows in the evening. He taught me how to make halfway decent scrambled eggs. I showed him how to fix the Wi-Fi when it glitched. At night, we did our own thing. I'd retreat to my room, headphones on, editing videos or gaming until my eyes burned. He'd be in the living room, half asleep on the couch with his laptop open and a half-eaten protein bar beside him. But slowly, it shifted. The space between us started feeling smaller. It started with little things, like the way he started knocking on my door before asking if I wanted takeout. Or how he started showing up in my room just to sit on the floor and scroll through his phone while I worked. No reason, just company. I didn't question it. Not out loud, anyway. But at night, when the house was quiet, I'd replay those moments. Like the time he sat on the arm of the couch, closer than necessary, and his knee bumped mine. He didn't move it. Or how one night, after a few drinks, he slurred out a, "You're actually kind of funny," and gave me this slow smile that made my stomach twist. It was nothing. Probably. Then one night, everything tilted just a little too far. It was a Thursday. Hot as hell. One of those sticky nights where sleep feels impossible. I'd taken a cold shower and thrown on a pair of gym shorts. No shirt. Walked into the kitchen for water and found Theo sitting at the island, barefoot, shirtless, sweating slightly as he flipped through some ancient comic book. He looked up, his eyes lingered, just a second too long. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. Too hot, I said, grabbing a glass. You? He shrugged. I don't know. Kept thinking about stuff. I raised an eyebrow. Anything I can help with? He looked at me for a moment. Really looked. Then he shook his head, stood up, and said, Nah, just overthinking. He walked past me, close enough that his shoulder grazed mine. You always walk around like that? He asked, teasing. Like what? He smirked. Shirtless. Confident. I snorted. It's my house, too. Didn't say I minded, he muttered, almost too low to hear. I froze. By the time I turned around, he was already heading upstairs. But the way he said it stuck with me. The tone. The edge. He didn't say it like a joke, and I didn't hear it like one either. The next morning, things felt normal. Or at least, he made them feel that way. Theo was already in the kitchen when I got up, shirt on now, earbuds in, focused on scrambling eggs like nothing had happened. He glanced up when I walked in and gave me a quick morning, like the night before hadn't been weird at all. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, the way he looked at me, the way his voice dropped, but I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. We didn't talk about it. Instead, we slipped back into our summer rhythm, grocery store runs, late night shows, dumb arguments about cereal brands. I kept telling myself that nothing had changed, but I knew better. Because sometimes I'd catch him looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, not in a creepy way, just focused, curious, and sometimes I let my gaze wander too, like when he'd come back from a run, shirt soaked through, his hair damp, chest rising and falling. Or when he'd walk around the house barefoot, rubbing his eyes after a nap like a kid who hadn't fully woken up. It was getting harder to ignore. Not just the way I was noticing him, but the way he seemed to be noticing me too. One night, maybe a week after the kitchen moment, we were out back. The porch light was flickering again, and Theo had dragged out a couple of camping chairs so we could sit in the dark and avoid the heat inside. We were both a little buzzed, cheap beer, too many laughs. He was telling me about this girl he'd dated sophomore year. She thought I was cheating, he said, smirking. I wasn't. I was just distant. I don't think I really knew what I wanted back then. I sipped my drink. Do you now? He looked over at me. Long pause. Getting closer. There was something in his voice. Serious. Soft. It hung in the air between us. Heavier than it should have been. Then he asked, "You ever been with a guy?" I froze. He said it like he was asking if I'd ever tried sushi. Casual. Curious. But my heart jumped all the same. "Yeah," I said quietly. "A few times." He nodded. Didn't look surprised. "Cool." I didn't ask him the question back. I was too afraid of the answer. But later that night, when I passed his room on the way to the bathroom, his door was open, just a crack. He was lying on his bed, shirt off, phone on his chest, eyes closed. The soft glow from his lamp lit up his face in gold and shadow. And for a split second, I stopped, watched, until he said, without opening his eyes, "You gonna come in? Or just stare?" I froze. He opened one eye, barely smiling. "I can hear your breathing, dude." I stepped inside slowly, heart pounding. Didn't mean to be weird. "It's not weird," he said. "Unless we make it weird." I stood at the edge of his bed. "So what is this then?" Theo sat up, propped on his elbows. "You tell me." I couldn't speak. My throat had gone dry. I could feel the heat in the room, the tension between us so thick it almost buzzed. He reached out, just lightly, and hooked 2 fingers into the hem of my t-shirt. Not pulling, just holding, testing. And that was the moment. The one where I knew this wasn't just me. It wasn't in my head. He felt it too. "We're not really brothers," he said quietly. "I know. And you've thought about it." I nodded. He let go of my shirt, leaned back against the pillows. "Then stay." It wasn't a command. It was an invitation. I stayed. We didn't touch that night. Not really. I lay beside him, a full pillow's width apart, both of us staring at the ceiling like it could explain what the hell we were doing. But at one point, somewhere between silence and sleep, he shifted closer. His arm brushed mine. And this time, neither of us moved away. I woke up before him. The sunlight was just starting to filter through the blinds, painting long slashes of gold across the floor. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Then I saw Theo, still asleep beside me, his chest rising and falling slowly under the thin blanket. His face looked different in the quiet, softer. Younger, maybe. His hand had slipped between us sometime during the night, and now rested, just barely touching my forearm. It would have been easy to shift away, pretend it hadn't happened, but I didn't. I stayed still. I watched his fingers twitch slightly as he slept and tried to convince myself this was still safe, that nothing had really happened. But it had. Something had. When he finally stirred, eyes blinking open, the moment felt heavy. He didn't pull away. "Hey," he murmured, voice gravelly from sleep. "Morning," I whispered back. For a beat, we just looked at each other. No smile, no awkward laugh. Just silence that said more than either of us wanted to admit. Eventually, he sat up, rubbed his face, and said, I guess we should get breakfast or something." "Yeah," I said, pulling the blanket off slowly. "Good idea." And that was that. The spell broke. We didn't talk about it. We didn't mention that I'd stayed the night. Or that we'd fallen asleep facing each other with barely an inch between us. But everything felt different. Charged. Like we were both walking through a house full of live wires. The next few days were a blur of almosts. Almost touching hands when we passed the remote. Almost brushing shoulders on the stairs. Almost saying something that would tip us past the edge. One night, we watched a movie on the couch. A thriller, something with a lot of tense silences. I barely registered the plot. I was too focused on how close he was sitting. Our knees were touching, barely, but enough. Neither of us moved. Halfway through, he stretched, arm casually landing behind me on the couch. Not pulling me in, not making a move, just there, waiting. It stayed like that for 20 minutes. And then, without looking at me, he said, "You ever think about what happens when they come back?" The question caught me off guard. "Our parents?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, like will this stop? Whatever this is." I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. He turned his head slightly, eyes still on the TV. "Do you want it to stop?" "No," I said, before I could stop myself. Theo turned to look at me. His eyes were serious, softer than I'd ever seen them. Me neither. He didn't kiss me that night, but the way he looked at me made it clear. It was coming. We were just waiting for one of us to make that final move. It happened 2 nights later. We were in the kitchen. It was late. He was washing dishes, and I was drying them, the air between us thick with things unsaid. The only sound was the running water and the occasional clink of a plate. And then, as I handed him a dish towel, his fingers closed over mine. He didn't let go. I looked up. He was already watching me. He stepped closer, slowly, like he was giving me time to back away. I didn't. He kissed me. Soft at first. Careful. His lips barely brushed mine, like he was asking a question with no words. I answered by kissing him back. The towel dropped between us. The water kept running. It was gentle and electric all at once. A slow unraveling of tension that had been building since the moment we first met. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and wide-eyed, he whispered, "That wasn't weird, right?" I shook my head. "No, not even close." We didn't talk much after that kiss. Not because we were ignoring it, but because we didn't need to say anything. Every look, every glance, every brush of fingers after that said it all. Something had changed between us, permanently, and neither of us was trying to rewind it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, still tasting him on my lips, still feeling the heat of his hands on my waist. I replayed every second, every beat between us, like a scene from a movie I didn't want to end. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't want to. The next morning, I found him sitting on the back porch, legs stretched out, coffee in one hand, his hair a mess. He looked up when I opened the screen door and gave me this crooked smile, like he wasn't sure what he was allowed to feel, but he felt it anyway. "Hey," he said. "Hey." I sat beside him. Our knees touched. He didn't move. "You good?" he asked, not looking at me. I nodded. "Yeah." "You?" He hesitated, then said, "Yeah." Just weird trying to figure out what this means. I bit my lip. I don't think it has to mean anything right away. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath all morning. Okay, cool. Because He stopped, then started again. Because I don't want to screw this up. You're not, I said. We're figuring it out. That became our silent agreement. No labels, no rush, just us, learning how to exist in this new, strange space we'd created. But even without saying anything, things kept moving forward. We started staying up later, always ending up in the same room, always close. His hand would find mine during movies. He'd sit a little closer on the couch. And sometimes, when the lights were low and the world outside felt far away, he'd pull me into his lap and just hold me there, forehead resting on my shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. It was those quiet moments that hit hardest, the stillness between us, the way he'd breathe against my skin, like he was memorizing me. One night, I found him in the laundry room, folding shirts on the dryer. You fold your laundry? I teased, leaning in the doorway. I have standards, he said, deadpan. Besides, you always steal my shirts. I'm trying to identify the victims. I laughed and stepped inside. Your shirts are soft. He raised an eyebrow. You think I don't notice you wear my NASA sweatshirt when I'm not home? I shrugged. It's comfortable, he smirked, stepped closer. You could have just asked. And then he kissed me again, this time without hesitation. It was firmer, deeper, like he was done pretending we hadn't crossed that line. He kissed me like we were the only two people left in the world. When we finally pulled apart, I leaned my forehead against his. We're not hiding this anymore, are we? He shook his head. Not from each other. That night I slept in his bed. We didn't do anything, just curled up under the blanket, our bodies tangled together, skin against skin. I fell asleep with his breath in my hair and his hand on the small of my back. It was the first time in a long while I felt safe. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of his heartbeat under my cheek. He was already awake, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. You okay? I asked. Yeah, he said. Then he looked at me, just thinking how this started, with us being complete strangers, I smiled. Now you're stuck with me, he smirked, pulled me closer. Not complaining. After that, we stopped pretending. We weren't running around kissing each other in broad daylight or anything. We were still careful, still cautious, but there was no denying what we were anymore, at least not to each other. I'd find little notes from him in my room. Dumb stuff like, save me a Pop-Tart or, you snore by the way, but sometimes they were quieter, more honest. You look good in that hoodie today. Or, once, I like the way you say my name when you're sleepy. He kept a straight face about it all. That was his thing, playing it cool, acting like nothing ever touched him. But I could tell when he was getting nervous. His fingers would tap against his leg, his eyes would shift. Just a little. One evening, I caught him doing it while we were cooking together, chopping veggies for stir-fry. I asked what was up, and he just said, nothing, too quickly. I waited. Didn't push, and finally, as we were cleaning up, he said, you ever think about what we're doing? I wiped my hands on a dish towel. All the time. I mean, we're stepbrothers. I leaned against the counter, watching him. Yeah. And? He met my eyes. You don't think that's weird? I shrugged. Maybe it would be if we grew up together. If we actually had some kind of sibling history. But we didn't. You didn't even exist in my life until last year. He looked down. Still feels like it would freak people out. Probably, I admitted, but they're not the ones living it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I don't want to stop. Then don't. He looked up at me again, and this time I saw something break open in his expression. Relief, maybe. Or something like it. That night, we sat on the floor of his bedroom, backs against the bed frame. Music playing low from his speaker. He was flipping through one of my sketchbooks, tracing his finger over a quick pencil drawing I'd done of him, one I hadn't meant for him to see. You think I look like this? He asked. I drew what I saw. He turned to me slowly, his face unreadable. Then he leaned in, kissed me softly, and said, You make me feel different. Different how? Like, I don't have to keep pretending I've got it all figured out. That hit harder than I expected. We sat like that for a while, legs touching, his head resting on my shoulder, and in that stillness, I felt something settle. Something solid. This wasn't a crush. This wasn't curiosity. It was something real. The days started bleeding together in the best kind of way. We cooked. We hung out. We kissed in the quiet parts of the house where the air felt still and nobody was watching. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't chaotic. It just was. Simple. Comfortable. Like we'd found something we didn't know we were missing. But that comfort made it easy to forget that summer doesn't last forever. It hit me one afternoon when I came home from grabbing groceries and saw Theo on the phone, pacing the backyard, one hand in his hair. He didn't see me at first, so I just stood there, watching. "No, I get it," he was saying. Yeah, I'll figure it out, Dad." He ended the call with a sigh and sat down hard on the back steps. I walked over, setting the bags down beside him. "Everything okay?" He looked up, tried to force a smile. "Yeah, just logistics." "What kind of logistics?" He hesitated. "My roommate situation fell through. I was supposed to move back to campus housing next week, but they screwed something up with my paperwork, and now I don't have a guaranteed spot." I sat beside him. "You could stay here?" He looked at me. "I thought about that. And I'm trying to figure out if that's a good idea." I stared at him. "You don't want to stay?" He rubbed his face with both hands. "It's not that. I do want to stay. That's the problem. This thing between us. It's real, I feel it. But if I stay, it won't be just a summer thing anymore. It becomes everything." My heart thudded. "And you're scared of that?" He nodded. "A little." I didn't push. Just sat there, the heat of the sun fading on our shoulders, listening to the wind move through the trees. Later that night, he came into my room without knocking, which he rarely did. I was lying on my bed, scrolling aimlessly, trying to distract myself from the ache in my chest. He sat at the edge of the bed and looked down at me. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how people aren't the ones living this." "Yeah? I think I'm done worrying about them." I sat up slowly, my breath catching. He reached for my hand, slid his fingers between mine. "I want to stay. Not just in the house. With you." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I leaned forward, kissed him softly, and we didn't let go of each other for the rest of the night. After that night, everything felt different. Not louder or messier, just deeper. Theo stayed. He emailed his school to defer housing, said he'd commute, figure it out later. And just like that, the quiet rhythm we'd built over the summer became something steadier, something real. We didn't make grand declarations. We didn't map out the future, but we made coffee for each other in the mornings. We left the porch light on when one of us got home late. We started sharing laundry baskets without talking about it. And sometimes, we'd fall asleep in the same bed, half wrapped around each other, limbs tangled under a blanket that suddenly didn't feel too small anymore. The first time I caught myself calling him babe, a sleepy mumble in the kitchen, I froze. Waited for him to flinch or laugh. He didn't. Just looked up from his bowl of cereal, smiled softly, and said, "Took you long enough." There were still moments of uncertainty, glances that asked, "Are we doing this right?" or "How long can this last?" But we never said them out loud. The silences we shared weren't empty anymore. They were full of answers we didn't have to say. Then came the phone call that shifted everything. It was a Thursday. My mom called around noon, her voice bright and chipper. She and Theo's dad were coming home a week earlier than planned. "We just missed you guys," she said, "and the RV shower is giving me hives." When I hung up, Theo was lying on the couch with his eyes closed. "They're coming back Sunday," I said. He opened one eye. "Already?" "Yeah." He nodded, staring at the ceiling. "Guess we'll have to start acting like roommates again." "Think we can pull that off?" He smirked. "I don't think we've ever acted like roommates." Sunday came too fast. We cleaned the house like two guys trying to erase a secret. Separate laundry loads, bedrooms back to normal. My sketchbook disappeared into a drawer. His shirts reappeared in his closet. We even slept apart the night before they arrived, not because we wanted to, but because it felt safer. When they finally walked through the door, it felt like being caught in the middle of a dream and forced to pretend you hadn't just been flying. Dinner that night was all laughter and wine, stories from the road, and awkward glances between Theo and me that didn't quite mean what they used to. We didn't touch. We didn't risk it, but later, when everyone was in bed, I heard the soft knock on my door. I opened it to find him standing there, hair messy, t-shirt rumpled. He didn't say anything. He just stepped inside, shut the door quietly behind him, and pulled me into his arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. We didn't sleep together that night, in the way people assume. We just slept, held each other. The way you do when you finally stop pretending the world outside matters, more than the one you've built inside a quiet, dark room. After they got back, everything got quieter. Not between us. Between us, things were the same, if not more certain, but in the way we moved through the house. Careful again. We had to relearn how to exist in shared spaces without being obvious. We kept the affection behind closed doors. Whispered moments. A brush of fingers in the hallway when no one was watching. Late night talks in my room with the door closed and the fan on to muffle our laughter. I hated it. Not being with him, hiding him, pretending there was a line we hadn't already crossed 100 times. One afternoon, about a week after our parents returned, I came home to find Theo outside, sitting on the porch steps with his phone in one hand and a faraway look on his face. "Everything okay?" I asked. He looked up slowly, almost startled. Then he nodded. "Yeah, just thinking." I sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder. He was quiet for a while, then finally said, "Do you ever wonder how long we can keep this up?" I didn't need to ask what this meant. "All the time," I said. He sighed. "I hate pretending." "Me too." He looked over at me, his expression serious. "Do you regret it? Us?" I didn't answer right away, just reached over, slid my fingers between his. "No," I said, "not for a second." His shoulders relaxed a little, but I could see it, the weight he was carrying, the way we lived in this limbo between love and secrecy. "We could tell them," I said quietly. He looked at me. "You think they'd understand? I think we won't know unless we try." There was a long pause. He didn't speak, didn't move. Then he said, "Let's wait, just a little longer. Let's figure out us first. Not just the summer version, the real thing." And as much as I hated hiding, I understood. That night, back in my room, he curled up beside me and whispered, "This is real, right?" I nodded. "It is." Weeks passed, then months. We built a life in the margins, sneaking glances at family dinners, texting from opposite rooms like we were back in high school again. We learned each other's routines, moods, silences. I started keeping an extra toothbrush in his bathroom drawer. He started wearing my hoodies without asking. One night, we ended up at this little bar downtown. Some friends from school had dragged us out, and for once, we weren't the Stepbrothers at home. We were just two guys, leaning into each other at the edge of a noisy crowd. When the night got quieter and most of our friends had left, we sat in the back corner with half-drunk beers and a basket of cold fries. "I want this," he said suddenly. I looked at him. "This," he repeated. "Us. Out in the open. All the way." I didn't say anything. I just reached across the table and took his hand. He held on tight. We didn't make an announcement. There was no grand reveal. But the next weekend, at brunch, when his dad asked what we'd been up to, Theo glanced at me before saying, "Actually, there's something we should probably talk about." It was awkward, weird, a little tense, but not the disaster we'd feared. And later, when we were lying on my bed, the sun slipping through the blinds in soft stripes, Theo rolled over, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You know I love you, right?" I smiled. "I've known,"